So Dental Rift is turning 1 year old. In today's show, I'm going to share with you all the clips that went viral and all the top moments. You're going to want to hear these. Some of them are pretty funny and some of them are really interesting. I wanted to give you the background of how Dental Rift actually started. So Tanner and I would always call each other and get on the phone and just sometimes talk for an hour. And we would talk about what if this and what if that, or what about this thing, or how's this going to impact the dental industry. And I finally just said, Tanner, we need to record these and turn them into a podcast. So that's the origin of Dental Rift. I'm just going to give you some highlights and hopefully you enjoy them. In this episode, Tanner and I break down employee reviews and how they can impact your business and really impact you as a business owner.
We have this chat that's going on, and one of them recently was like, hey, what do you guys do about your employee satisfaction, right? So we talked about the employee net promoter score and how that doesn't directly correlate to specific things like how well the manager is doing. But overall, you should be measuring your employee satisfaction in their job.
Yeah. One of the questions that I've just started to blindly ask, I haven't got the data back on it yet, is what do you love about our culture? So in between our EMPS score, so we used to do those quarterly. It was a bit too much. So we're doing it every 6 months now. Mm-hmm. And we have our last score was 84, which is like, for 100 team members, it's insane. It's insanely high, which I'm very thankful for our team, like making that work. And it's a lot of work it doesn't just happen on accident, right? Okay. So now in between that, we want some more feedback. So what we're adding now is, what do you love about SMC's culture? So what do you love about our company culture? And what do you hate, or what do you just not like about our culture? Because they're going to give us some feedback, right? Even if they love it, even if everybody loves working here and it's great and our turn is super low on our team members, what do you love about working here? And then the other thing that I want to start measuring too, and this is on a blind level, is, so I don't know who's actually saying this stuff. I just want the information back from them. And I don't want them to feel, and we've built this relationship, it doesn't happen overnight, but I don't want them to feel like there's going to be repercussions for them answering these things. Right. So doing it blind. And then the other thing about doing blind things is people don't usually trust that they're really blind the first couple times that you do them. Right. Like people have to test it out and say, okay, I'm going to say something crucial. Let's see if I get in trouble, if I get reprimanded for this. So we've built that for over time. So here's the other thing that we've been asking is, or we're just about to ask, I should say, is what percentage, to what percentage do you directly contribute to the company's success? And then to what percentage does your department directly contribute to the company's success? Now, what I anticipate is going to happen is people are going to way overestimate, right? Like, oh, we're 80% or 50% or 33%, right? And then when I add up all the percentages, it's going to be like 4,000%, which is impossible, right? But that's what you want. We want people to feel like they're contributing and to the overall success. Now, if that number's low, if everybody comes back and that number's low, then we have a problem. And because they feel like I'm just doing a mindless job that doesn't really impact the overall success, they're not clear on where we're going. So those are the two levers that we're looking at right now to pull in between our EMPS scores.
When are you closing that? When are you supposed to get that first round in?
I think this week or next week. I should actually this week. Okay. I'm supposed to get it this week. Yeah, I'll let you know when I get it. I don't know how I'm going to quantify.
Keep us updated on that.
Yeah. I'll add it to my show notes so we talk about it next week. But yeah, I don't know how I'll quantify the data yet. Like I don't have a way to like, oh, our score was this at the end. It's just information to be able to go back through. And then I'm sure I'm going to be able to go back later and look at it and go, okay, I'm going to ask it this way this time to better quantify. Because that's going to be the next step is, how do I actually take this information and use it?
I'm interested to see the percentage of impact that you have on the company aggregated together.
Me too.
It's amazing when you get a 4,000% contributed company.
Yeah, it is. You can do big things with that. In this episode, Tanner and I have an hour-long conversation about the future of AI inside of dental and why it works sometimes and why in other cases, dentists are actually holding back AI from working inside of their practices. Basically, the AI needs to roll out. That's going to create some kind of something. It's going to create just benchmarks somewhere because we don't even have those benchmarks of good and bad right now. Get those benchmarks. Oh, look, you're in the top 20%. Oh, look, you're in the bottom 20%. And then from there, that's when the real conversations are going to start happening. Right. So are we 10 years out from that happening or?
Well, so this insurance company flagged me in a 12-month span of time. So in 12 months, they knew I was completely off the board. So
Okay.
so
So it could start happening in the next couple years.
6 to 9 months. I
Yeah.
mean, so if you think about a timeline, if you have access to segments of that timeline, you can piece together the entire timeline in a 1 month span. What does it do? What does a dentist do when they're presented with this type of treatment? What
Hmm.
does that dentist do when they're presented with a more advanced treatment? What does a dentist do when they're presented with very advanced treatment? So you can literally, in a span of 1 month, if you have 5 years worth of data from 10 doctors, you can piece together an entire timeline of that DSO and know instantaneously,
So
what the
so
future holds.
what's the AI companies, are they going to release this information? Are they going to come out with it, or are they going to be worried
They've
about
got to
coming
take
out
the
with it?
lead.
Yeah, they have to,
Right.
because
Yeah.
I don't think the DSO is going to come out and say, "Hey, here's what we're doing. Let's compare to all these other DSOs."
So
Correct.
the other companies that obviously have access to this type of data are the insurance companies, and there's a reason why the insurance companies haven't released this, right? And so, what is the financial protection that they're doing where they don't release it? And is AI going to run into the same thing where they're like, hey, you know what? We're not going to make this a public, like, we're not going to die on the sword of trying to make sure that all the standards are improved.
Correct. So I think one thing we also have to realize with a PPO group, there is a certain aspect of liability. So I, as a doctor, have more liability than anyone else that you talk to as far as when it comes to providing dental care. DSOs are isolated and protected. Same thing with insurance companies and same thing with other third party payers. So as an insurance company, if you're going to go out and say there is a difference and you recommend a doctor based on that difference, then you're accepting a certain amount of that liability from the data that you've generated. And when I presented this to an insurance company said, look, there's a certain aspect of liability that we don't want to take on by recommending a doctor based on the quality outcomes because we're not providing that service themselves. At the same time, if an insurance company primarily makes a lot of money or makes their money on the size of their network, do they necessarily want to reduce the volume of their network by 20% to drive out the worst doctors? So it goes back to those financial aspects. And that's actually why I went to get my MBA before I got this Master's of Health Science, because there's sort of a saying, if you're not making someone some money, like if you're not, you can't do good by not doing good. You've got to make it profitable for somebody. If you don't make it profitable for somebody, then it doesn't go anywhere.
It won't get done. Yeah.
Right.
Correct. So that's a whole nother argument. Like I said, I think if you're a DSO and you're an AI company, you need to be thinking, what happens if we just replace some of these large insurance companies? Because an insurance is only an algorithm. I mean,
Yeah.
That's all we're talking about. It's just a simple algorithm.
This was one of our most popular episodes where we brought on the CEOs of several practice management softwares and we discussed the future of the industry. This one's very interesting because they concluded the cloud is the future of PMS.
So playing devil's advocate, right? You guys are obviously all CEOs of a cloud-based solution, but if you were to play devil's advocate for an on-prem solution, is there a benefit or a reason to choose that over the cloud?
I'll take a shot at it since I've seen the argument go over many times in my career. The one that comes to mind first and foremost, it's this. If you're really risk adverse, the fear of unknown, the fear of change. I think that's first and foremost, to be honest with you, because I think over the long run, I don't think anybody really disagrees that at some point in time, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's 10 years from now, the cloud will win out. I truly believe that. But the question is, well, when? I think it's when should I go, not if I should go. And if your staff, your personality, your practice, your DNA is risk adverse, you'll take the safe bet. And the safe bet is just do what I've been doing. That's just human nature. And I think that's the argument for staying there. I think the other one is just you can control everything about it. Now that means you need to get more into the technology. You need to configure. You need to invest. But there is an argument that says if you want to truly do custom everything, you can only do that on premise. I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm saying if that's what you decide you need, then you need total control. And you could argue, well, you should be a vendor, not not a dentist's office. But there is a lot of systems that have a lot of ability to extend, more so on the on-prem world. And if that's your gig, then go crazy. But be prepared for total cost of ownership over time, because it ain't going to get cheaper.
Maybe I can throw in some data and some numbers around the transition to the cloud versus on-prem, and give some perspectives based on our learnings over the last 5-6 years. A dental software transition is really like an open heart surgery for the most part, because you're really propagating change and trying to affect behavioral change inside offices. So for these reasons, based on the research that we have done extensively over the last couple of years, there's roughly 5,000 transitions or so that happens in a year where people change systems, where they decide to move from one system to another, right? And roughly 30% of these transitions are quite often from one sort of a client server system to a different one. And over the years, we have seen, the cloud adoption really scaled up to 70% of the market for those systems, for those offices which are transitioning off of systems, which means roughly in a year, you have 3,500 or so unique transitions that happens in the industry, not offices, but unique businesses transitioning from one software to another. Now, that being said, out of that 3,500, it's really, that's kind of what the cloud market really comes down to. It has really scaled over the years to roughly 3,500 transitions, right? And those transitions happen for two different reasons based on, our experience working through the process of engaging with these prospects. There's one class of customers who really look for a transition simply because they can't live with the pain of having to work with multiple systems, right? And the practice management software is a pursuit of pain. It's not a pursuit of pleasure, which means you have to experience direct vexing pain, which ranges from missing appointments to inability to verify insurances to no shows and cancellations climbing up and not knowing what to do and not anywhere staying in control of your operations, the sort of pain which has a bottom line impact, right? So there's a class of customers who clearly know that that they're using multiple systems, quite often bolted on top of existing client server systems, and it's really causing a bottom line impact, which is causing them to lose money, and they're going through direct pain. They're seeking resolution for that pain. That's one class of customers. The second class of customers who really look at moving over to the cloud are those customers who are actually happy with what they have in the first two offices or so that they have really started, but then they figure out as they are adding the next set of offices, their current infrastructure that works well for them today isn't sufficient enough to really support them for the future, right? And those guys basically consider a movement to the cloud far more seriously, and you get a motivated prospect in the process, right? So just to sum it up, as it stands today in the market, you have roughly 3,500 transitions, which qualify as your base for transitions to the cloud. Pretty much you can divide it into two kinds of customers. One set of customers who are going through pain on their current systems, and the second set of customers who are okay, but who have plans for growth, and they have figured out that a more centralized way of managing operations that allows them to reduce overheads per location, both direct and indirectly, those guys choose an adoption to the cloud. And a cloud transition is not certainly for everyone, right? So like what Rick said, if you don't fall into these classes of customers, your motivation to effect change is quite often low, and therefore you're far better off choosing to do something that you're comfortable with.
In this episode, Tanner and I discuss what using AI was like for us the first time that we used it. And this was right as AI was coming out. And we also share how AI is going to impact the dental industry. All right, my last one. AI is going to have some kind of impact on the dental industry, like for real. Not like, oh yeah, it's coming. I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know exactly. Like, I think it's going to be on the like x-rays and treatment side. But here's why I'm making this prediction, because I don't actually know how it's going to play out in the dental side. I have some thoughts, but this is just why I feel this way. So have you used OpenAI yet?
Oh, yes. Yeah, oh my gosh.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I was blown away by it. Chat GPT.
Okay, cool. Me too. So OpenAI is like drastically change the way I look at things, right? Like, I get on there, I use it every single day, multiple times a day. I write emails with it. I write social posts. I write, I was on a podcast and I was like, oh, you got to read this book. And they were like, what's that book about? And I went in there and I was like, give me the 3 things on that book again, because it's been a couple of years since I read it. And it's like, here's the 3 things on that book, boom, 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 boom. I show it to my kids. My kids are using it on all of their homework, all their papers. Like, writing a paper outside of a class setting will never happen again. Like, it's done. Like, you don't need to write papers anymore. You have a thing that will write the papers for you, and you adjust it a little bit. So AI is going to literally, as of a month ago or 2 months ago, when OpenAI really started catching traction, is literally changing education. Like, how I view education now is like, you need to be working on how to make people more creative. You need to be working on how to make better critical decisions, things like that, right? Because I don't need to memorize the presidents anymore. I can pull it up on my phone. I don't need to be able to write a paper. I can use this and adjust it, right? So it's already, AI just like overnight was able to change a lot of things very, very quickly. And let me give you another one. I'll give you another example, because I think this is important for people to understand and kind of bridge this concept of the impact it's going to have. So right now I can go into OpenAI and I can type in, give me a 5-minute video script on the economic crash of 2008 and how it impacted the dental industry. It'll write me a 5-minute video script. I can take that script and load it into another site, and it can give me a voiceover, a realistic voiceover. So now I have a voice. Then I can put it into another site and say, give me B-roll to match the video B-roll. So like panning cameras. So give me a video B-roll to match this script. And then I have a video that I can load into YouTube that's an educational video. So what this means is, in the very near future, you're going to be able to do that on one site. You're going to be able to type in, make me a video about this that's 10 minutes long. And then it'll have the B-roll, it'll have the voice, it'll have everything all rolled up into one. And it'll all be robot. Because we have unlimited access to information, we just can't. Now we're just learning how to have machines calibrate it for us, right? So that's AI. It's going to happen in dental. Like, it has to happen in dental. Now, where I think it's going to happen first, and we've actually had guests on that kind of help me understand this, the insurance companies are going to start knocking it out of the park with this. And they're going to start slapping people. So you're going to get people in the insurance industry that are going to be like, nope, rejected on little things that you're not used to getting rejected. And they're going to say, why'd you reject this? And it's just like, oh, our AI just rejected it. Where before they'd have to use a human to do it. And so and you're going to notice this pick up, because it's just going to be machines doing it. And it's going to make total sense for the dental insurance companies to do it. So they're going to be first movers. Then the practices, by now, instead of playing offense, they're going to have to play defense. So I think that's going to happen this year. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it happens next year, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's a 24 thing. If I were to personally guess, I think that, yes, there is AI. AI has already existed in, like you said, like the clinical side of things, but it hasn't had a ton of immediate change impact on how businesses use it, right? But I do see a lot of AI coming out right now in insurance billing process, not just like is it approved or not, but also in the process of like creating claims, verifying benefits, etc. And I think that is going to happen. I don't think that 1 year is enough time, though, to shift it big in the industry.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes.
In this episode, we learned how a massive DSO was sued for $3.5 million for deceptive marketing techniques. So Tanner, let's just share the backstory. Tanner texted and said, hey, you better read up on this because I'm talking about it today. And it was a link to a story that is about a lawsuit that Here's the title of the ad. Attorney General's office reaches $3.5 million settlement with Aspen Dental over claims of deceptive advertising. And so I started doing some searching, and it looks like they had another lawsuit just a couple of years ago, and then there was some other activity around that. So
this
Tanner,
also plays one of the things too that we can go in a million directions with this, Gary. I think that's why we're passionate about it. Another thing too that this ties into is this idea that there's some other business models out there that are going to be threatened to get sued for malpractice of our advertising, right? So I wanted to chat with the GOAT himself of dental marketing and say, okay, what does the guidelines say around like what makes it deceptive versus not deceptive? So let's start with Aspen itself, right? Aspen, this time around, and I say that because this is not, as you alluded to, the first time around that they've gotten hit with lawsuits around deceptive advertising. But this time around, they got hit with kind of 3 different infractions. The first one being, hey, we accept all insurances, when in reality, they didn't accept the Massachusetts Medicaid or Medicare that had dental benefits. That was one thing. The second thing was they said free services, and I don't know exactly how detailed they were on that, but they end up having to pay about $700,000 back to patients that they charged for, even though they claimed free services. And then the last one, the third one, was no hidden fees, right? So they'd say, hey, this is an all-in inclusive denture pricing, no hidden fees, and then they'd come in and end up getting sent to collection because of these hidden fees that may not have been explicit in this all-encompassing thing. So to me, a lot of those, like, there's a lot of things that I'd love to chat with you about. I want to go with the hidden fees one, though, Gary. That just, like, as a DSO owner that's approving an advertising budget, right? Like, the no hidden fees just seems so scary to me because
I don't even understand that. I don't understand it. Help me understand what that means. Like, what does that even mean?
I don't. The way that I would do it was like, hey, this is your all-inclusive, like, budget for dentures, no hidden fees associated with it, right? Like, okay, like in my mind, that makes sense. But the reality is like, there's so much more that it goes into diagnosing someone's dentures that, yes, you're going to have to add something onto that. Maybe they don't even need dentures.
Yeah. So why wouldn't you just say plans starting at X? Why wouldn't you just say plans for all in 4, plans for dentures starting at $5,000 or whatever?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what my mind would be. It's like, let's use the vague term and not the direct term. So I'm curious, from your marketing perspective, is there any value that you can see in being that direct in wordage or messaging?
I can't. No, I don't. That's why I don't understand it. I don't understand what no hidden fees, and then they're hiding fees. And then what are the fees that they're actually hiding? So what are you hiding that you're trying to roll up into the actual fee itself?
Yeah, I think one thing when I was running a DSO where I tried to get into an all-inclusive pricing from a competitive standpoint was orthodontics.
Yeah.
Right. Orthodontics has definitely moved into more of a direct-to-consumer marketing strategy. And so pricing is a huge component of why people choose different orthodontics.
But here's the thing, Tanner, you should be positioning it around payment. you focus on the payment. Focus on the lower dollar amount, especially with larger treatment. If you can get it down to $49 a month, starting at $49 upon approved credit, right? Like that covers you. And then it's like, well, what does that include? Well, it includes these things. And you want the people to get on the phone and ask you questions. Now, I will say, if your people aren't trained on the phone, or you have a lot of people, and it's hard to train a lot of people, it's a hard thing to do. Quality control is huge. You're doing it at 20 offices. Imagine trying to do it at 1,000 offices, right? So there's difficulty to it, and then there's the accountability to it as well. That's difficult because knowing that everybody's following that is hard to do. But that I can understand why they might not want those questions, and then they would just go with the simple answer. That's something I could understand, where it's like, okay, we're just going to make it simple. Our price is this. You get everything. Yes. And then the patients are coming in. But that leads to really ticked off patients, really, really ticked off patients. And that goes into the second one that you brought up, that telling people things are free and then charging them for it is another great way just to make everybody upset. And what I thought, as I read it, what I thought they were doing, because I've seen people do this, where they go, hey, patient, free cleaning, right? But then they're like, but we're billing your insurance for $300. So it's free to you, but not free to your insurance. And that's a subtlety there that most people don't catch. So I thought that was maybe what they were doing.
And to clarify that too, that's actually billing fraud, right? If you are giving a discount to a patient, you have to be explicit with it upfront to your insurance. So now if you say free services for uninsured patients, like that's one thing, right? But if you're saying free services to all patients now, and you don't charge the patient, but you do charge billing, like I could see that being a huge hand slap from the insurance companies there in Massachusetts, but it wasn't. This is from the Attorney General on marketing, so it's a marketing problem.
Several of the next episodes are some of the hottest takes and some of the most viral clips that we've had on the show. So we're just going to run these back to back. I think you'll enjoy them.
So now to have these GPT models, that ChatGPT is one of them, to be able to go in and make it sound so natural and fluid in how they're conversing, right? The language and term and stuff. That's only a matter of time before they learn, okay, what's the right answer on this phone call? That now I am the phone call, right? I answer it and I go on outbound and get these scheduled with a higher conversion rate than anyone else could do personally.
Yeah, no, if you watch the video, there's a video of Google doing that, doing the voice answering thing on YouTube. It's amazing. So here's an interesting one. I got in a theological debate with ChatGPT today with one of my kids sitting there. And I said, list all the people, all the children. Like I wanted to see how complicated I can make it, right, for ChatGPT. So I said, list all the children in the Bible where the inheritance didn't go to the older child, it went to the younger child. And so it listed all these people. And some of them I disagreed with. And I was like, hey, I don't think that person. And then it was like, you know what? I could see why, and it like listed out its reason. And then like we were going, but it was a back and forth conversation. And I was just like blown away that it was able to carry on a conversation at that level. And it's just, again, it's only limited by what you can imagine. I saw somebody recently, Tanner, they took and said, well, ChatGPT can't make pictures. It actually can. If you have an interface that you can put code into, you can tell it, hey, write me a code to make me a circle, a red circle. And it will write code to give you a red circle that you can just copy and paste in. And then in the interface of a website or some kind of platform like that, like a WordPress plugin or something, you can plug it in and then instantly a picture pops up and it wrote the code for that. So it's pretty much endless. Just ChatGPT, what you could do. The other thing I've been using it for is putting transcripts from videos. So like this video that we're doing here, YouTube automatically transcribes it. And I cut pieces of it out and load it up in there and say, okay, give me the main takeaway or write a social post around this particular section. And it does a great job. So many things that I think it's going to continue to do. And it's one of those topics that I think we'll just keep talking about every week until we get bored with it, because other people seem to find it interesting as well. And I don't think there's not major adoption of it yet. I know they got to 1 million users faster than any platform ever, but they didn't, it's still very few. Everybody, I went to dinner last night with several people, and several people at dinner are like, yeah, I've heard of it, never used it, don't know how to log into it. And so most people still haven't used it and played with it. The future is AI for AI. So we're going to need AI to figure out AI, and we're going to need AI to protect ourselves against AI, and we're going to need AI to go on the offensive against AI. That's the future. Is this person using AI? Is that how they're cranking out so much work, right? And they're doing 10x what any of our other team members are doing? And then it's like, okay, well, how do we take and scale that? And it's fascinating. I love that we're in this time. I was watching a podcast with Lex Friedman, and he was talking with this guy. I don't even know who the guy was, but he basically brought up, if we were, history buffs way in the future, we're at this like tipping point in humanity's time where, we look back at like the Industrial Revolution, or we look back at like World War II, or we look back at like the Enlightenment, and we say, look at these times where society tipped this way. And we don't know a lot of them, right? There's these dots back in time. He's like, we're in one of those right now. And we've thought it was going to come for a long time. We've been talking forever about, internet's going to change everything, and blockchain's going to change everything. And it has slowly, right? And it's made things a little bit easier. But now it's actually at that stage that everybody thought, the Jetsons was going to be. We're approaching that now, and we're in the middle of it now. It's really cool. Coming up with solutions is not the same as coming and being able to identify the correct problem. So anybody can come up with solutions, but if you're coming up with solutions for the wrong problem, it doesn't matter. I would argue that Disney is hyper-focused on the right things, that provide customer service. And often dental offices don't even know what the things are to provide the customer service. Let me give you an example. Most dentists do not know that their unanswered call rate is in the 30s. And so instantly you're failing from a customer service standpoint, like right out of the gate. But the doctor has no idea. If you made him or her guess what their unanswered call rate was, they would say, oh, it's 5% or 1%. I even have doctors that are like, it's 0%. We don't miss any calls. And really they're missing a third of their calls. So just that little nuance there of being able to identify the right problem versus not identifying the right problem is going to make all the difference in the world.
I agree with that Disney is definitely focusing on the right things. My question, though, is that Disney has similar problems to what dental offices face, which is how do we get that data? Right? Obviously, Disney has the capability and the funds to be able to figure out the data that they need in order to be able to make sure they're measuring the right things, right? Like as soon as I go and stand in a queue to get in line for some ride, Disney knows how long I've been standing in that ride. Right, like they know exactly, they have all that stuff detailed in. And so maybe the argument is we just need to get better at recording and figuring out what numbers we need to be able to track in our dental offices.
The most important thing is networking, man. I cannot stress this enough. You got people in your practice that have been through classes with other licensed providers on some level. They're probably in groups with other licensed providers on some level. The school that they went to, they could be active there. I would really focus on initially networking that way. My tip is for hygiene. Hygiene has been a big pain point over the last 2 years for everybody. I would say equivalent to doctor, right? It's almost equivalent. All the hygiene schools, the local hygiene schools, especially if they're private, they have a board. You could put your office manager, the board meets once a quarter. And if you're on that board, you get first dibs on the graduating class. And it costs nothing. And it's like an hour every quarter. You go and you sit on the board and they talk about, hey, how can we provide better care? Or how can we, put out better hygienists or whatever? You can get on that board. I would also recommend for assistants, you can do the same thing, especially for private assisted schools. And I would also network, study groups for doctors, alumni groups for doctors. They're all over the country. Seattle Study Club is everywhere. And especially if you have a clinical aspect that you're bringing to the table, they're open to listening to you. So you can you can say, hey, this is what we're doing in our practice, but hey, by the way, we also need a doctor or we also need a hygienist or whatever. There's a lot of ways. I would focus on networking first because it's an in-house, you already know everybody, right? You already have some connections you may not be aware of. The second thing is you got to assign someone at the practice level who's focused on recruiting for at least a few hours during the week, and you have to give them those few hours. You can't just add that onto the plate of somebody who's also doing treatment coordinating and confirming appointments and collecting the money and kissing the doctor's ass. You know what I mean? Like all of that stuff is challenging, right? So I would dedicate at least, it depends on what your needs are at the practice level, but I would find somebody to dedicate, 5-10 hours a week. Maybe 5.
Why does Brazil produce some of the world's best soccer players consistently? And it didn't used to be this way. They used to be a horrible soccer country. And then they go into Russia and they find this little tennis club in Russia that produces some of the most amazing talent tennis wise. Why do all these amazing all this amazing talent for tennis come out of this tennis club? And they do this for all these different things. They use sports, they use music, they talk about Mozart, Einstein, all these different people, right? Scientifically, they break it down into 3 categories on how you can become amazing at something. And there's 3 things you have to do. So the first thing you have to do is you have to get reps in on failing. So they said one of the things that these soccer clubs and these tennis clubs and people who are great at music and Mozart, all of them, the commonality that they all share is that they're getting thousands and thousands and thousands of reps in on the areas that they're weak in. And what this broke down for me, and what I started to think about was, what do most people do when someone tells you, hey, you're really good at that? We like doing the thing that we're really good at. And then when we stink at something, what do? We try to avoid it and we work around it. And so people who are amazing at things, they have this amazing talent. What they're able to do is they're able to get repetitions in, not at the part that they're good at, that's easier for them, but at the things that they're bad at. And so as an example of in tennis, if your backhand's really weak, then you're going to sit there and you're going to do hundreds of reps at your backhand until you're not weak at it anymore. So that's the first stage of building out amazing talent. Then there's the second phase. The second phase is, they call it ignition. And so basically what that is the individual has to get fired up about the particular topic somehow. They either have to be super passionate, super excited about it, and or something of that nature. There has to be something that is cultivated inside of them that they want to go back to it over and over and over again. And this is, again, it really revolves around, in my opinion, this is more about passion, because it's going to get really, really hard. And then the third stage is mastery coaching. This is where somebody better than them comes in and then begins to work with them. And they started using like really specific examples. They said, well, what about these savants like Mozart or somebody like that? And he actually went in the book and he was like, this kid worked with his dad. And so by the time he was 6, he already got more reps in around music than most people have in their entire life, because he was with his dad. And he was learning over and over and over again. And his dad was hard on him, right? Like, nope, that's the wrong way to do it. Nope, do it again, do it again, do it again. They used Einstein as an example. They use these like guys that are amazing at math. They get these reps in, and then they get passionate about it, and then they get this mastery coaching on top of it. And this is what can consistently produce those three things. And they go into like the brain, and I think it's called melatonin or something like that, that creates white space in your brain. And really smart people have more white space in their brain, I guess. And that's created from your body, the repetition. Your body is like a computer. It memorizes how to do it. And you do that enough times over and over and over again, you can become excellent at something. And so I thought this was, I've always just thought, oh yeah, it's the water that they're drinking down there. That's why they create so many great players down there in Brazil. But it's not. It's the training that they're doing with these little kids from early ages. And it was just fascinating. And I started looking at myself in different areas that I excel in, and then going back through and figuring out, okay, where did I fail a lot? Where did I get passionate about it? And then where did I get coaching from the outside to actually become better at it?